How's it going, sports fans? This is Jack and Ryan back with the Talking Jack Sports Podcast. How you doing today, Ryan?
Pretty good, pretty good. Feeling good.
4 weeks into the NFL
4 weeks
season,
in.
and
Yes.
already it's just like chaos everywhere. It's insane.
So are you really surprised about the absolute chaos that the NFL's in right now between the injuries and just random teams doing good and
Yeah, this
other
is like the
teams doing
weirdest year
bad?
we've ever seen. Just offense is dead except for like one game a week,
Yep.
and still the Chiefs luck their way into a 4-0 record. It's insane.
Yeah, I would say the worst 4-0 team I've ever seen.
Yeah, there are two remaining undefeated teams and one winless team. Do you know who they are off the dome?
Off the dome. So obviously we just talked about the Chiefs. I'm
Yeah,
almost positive the Sam Darnold, the Minnesota Vikings did
it
not
is
lose
the
the game.
Vikes.
And the unfortunate one that it's unfortunate would be the Jags.
It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's crazy. That is wild.
It's
Like
like
I had them as a
crazy.
playoff team. They suck. They're the worst
Yeah,
team in football.
I don't know what to talk about that, man.
It's not good. But we're gonna talk about a couple teams this week. We did a full recap last week, but with just 2 weeks development, it's less so than coming off of the offseason 2 weeks in. You kind of get more developments that way.
yeah.
Before we do, shout out to Devontae Adams requesting a trade. Did you see that? Literally just happened.
I would say that was yeah. I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about that too. I was like, hopefully, future Falcon Devontae Adams.
That would be wild,
If
actually.
he
But
if he did, just know the memes where someone's like, I just saw someone fall to their knees at Walmart. Like whenever
yeah,
some news happens, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna fall on my knees and start bawling
it would
in
be
the local Walmart.
it would be nuts. Like, what would it take for the Commanders to get him? Like a second and like a fourth? I would do that.
I would do that too. I
Yeah,
mean, both. I don't want to say both our teams. I feel like you have a little bit better of a shot than the Falcons do.
I would say
But
so. Just
I
because our
will
wide receiver
say,
room is so thin, it's crazy.
yeah,
It's Terry and then a bunch of other guys.
yeah. But I mean, hey, I'm not gonna say London's a bona fide, wide receiver one, especially if you threw in someone like Devontae Adams comparison. But like,
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind if Terry Fontenot somehow did his little magic to get players for like I don't know how he does it, but
yeah.
he gets some people. It,
It would
I'm
be
gonna wake
it
up
would
from
be a
this
nice
dream.
addition.
I'm
But
gonna wake up from the dream.
yeah,
I don't know how to hype
um,
myself up for that.
don't hype yourself. I'm not. That's what we
I'm
were doing
not.
this offseason with Brandon Ayuk. Everyone was like, he and Jay Daniels, they already know each other. He's coming to DC. I was like, no, he's not. No, he's not.
It's like it'd be
Um,
cool, but no.
yeah, it's not happening. We would never do that. But we are going to talk about the Commanders and Falcons and a couple other teams, just in a more of a quick recap of a couple big things that happened in the span between this episode and last. And do you want to kick it off with your Falcons? Because we got to discuss our own teams.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can kick off with the Falcons. So obviously, we beat the Saints in a very, very. I'm not gonna lie to you. The scoreboard makes it look like it was super close, and it kind of was. But this game, watching the game, I don't know about you. It was painfully slow.
That was a rough one. The Saints felt like they had it wrapped the entire time just because the Falcons' offense was so anemic. But, touchdowns are touchdowns. Whether you score them on special
I
teams,
was gonna
defense, or
say,
offense, they're still
like,
worth 6 and 7 points. So,
and I will say, I mean, I don't really want to say like the punt was all us. Obviously, that's just a muff punt, and we capitalized on it, so that's cool. We can capitalize on big mistakes. I do really like the pick from Derek Carr that we got because that looked like a better schemed play. We got to the pressure. I believe it was Judon just kind of veteran move right there. Instead of just trying to destroy Derek Carr, he just puts his hands up, punches, ball hits off his hands. Nice little breadbasket for Anderson, and Anderson somehow waddled his way into the end zone. So that was really fun. Young Wei Koo is actually the best player on the Falcons.
yeah, Youngwood Ku's the GOAT, clearly, as we've learned.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that offense, and I don't understand what's going on. Because even on that last fourth quarter drive, Kirk looked like he was more than happy to gun it downfield for no other reason than because he could.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what's going on, if it's a play calling issue or if it's still a Kirk Cousins issue. I did find out that play against it would have been the Chiefs where the outside run with Bijan. That was actually an audible from Kirk Cousins. Bijan slipped up in an interview about that.
Oh.
So that was a Kirk Cousins move, which once again, I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. I do trust Kirk Cousins with some play calling ability, but I think that was stupid if that's actually the case.
Right. Leave the play call. I mean, he must have seen something in the defense to try and audible that, but
Yeah,
you
but
know.
I feel like that was still not the best audible there. But I don't have eyes on the field. I just have eyes, looking sideways. But no, I think the Falcons are still in a very weird spot overall. Like I don't really know how to feel about it. I'm like, okay, so we can beat some teams, but our offense is trash, or our defense is somehow the best part of our team.
Did not
Which
expect that. Yeah.
did not expect that one bit.
Yeah, I was personally expecting a little bit more from the rushing attack. I
That
just
too.
think it's just kind of the vibes are off, and I think not everything is synced. But this is a team with the pieces, and I think give them a couple weeks, give your Falcons a couple weeks,
Yeah, and
and
I
they
think
may have the division in their pocket. Them and the Bucks. The Bucks look really good,
I would say
but
the Bucks look really good. This Thursday we'll probably say a lot more about the Falcons.
yeah,
Especially with
is it
that
Falcons Bucks or what is
Falcons
it?
Bucks Thursday.
Yeah, that's a huge game.
Especially with that bleak Bucks line. Poor Baker was fighting for his life for like the last two games.
Yeah, so see if you can
So hoping we can
savage
capitalize on
wreak
that.
havoc.
If we can't get a sack in that game where one player on the Lions had 5, like, come on,
Yeah, hang 'em up.
we gotta get something.
Yeah,
But yeah, same issues still. Defense on the defense side still with like passing in the middle, check down merchant. Derek Carr capitalized on that. So I'm still worried about that, but hopefully we start figuring it out. And please, for the love of God, somehow get an edge rusher. Like get like some
Yeah.
guy on the line, please.
that would be
Judon-
a nice
Judon's
upgrade.
perfect, but we need somebody else.
He can't do it himself. Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree. I think if you want to try and get a defensive tackle, I mean, we're in the market to sell a guy like Jonathan Allen. So, I mean, I think
I take Jonathan Allen.
yeah, he's been pretty quiet so far this season. Maybe
Virginia,
he needs it.
Virginia
change it.
legend.
Yeah, Stonebridge High School legend Jonathan Allen. So, homegrown. So we're talking about our teams. I think the Commanders are the hottest team in the NFL that isn't quarterbacked by Sam Darnold, and just it's such a joy watching this team, which is the only time I think I've ever said that in my life. Guys look happy. Guys look excited to be there. It doesn't look like just like a swamp in the locker room. It is such a fresh feeling as a fan of this franchise because I've never experienced this before. Maybe when Taylor Heineke was somehow pulling wins out of his ass.
No RG3.
No RG3. I mean, listen, this is like RG3. I was not really paying attention for his glory days. The majority of stuff I remember as a fan watching RG3, like that I remember personally in front of the TV watching that guy, is when he was struggling after injury, constantly off the field. And then it was, I have mostly negative memories, unfortunately, about that. And it's not his fault. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that's just
times didn't line up.
Yeah, exactly. But, watching his highlights from his rookie year does bring me happiness, and I do that every once in a while. But speaking of highlights from his rookie year, it's looking a whole lot like who we got under center right now. Jaden Daniels is lighting up the stat sheet. Everyone's talking about his completion percentage. He's working the middle of the field, his rushing ability. He's finally started sliding every once in a while. The dude's just a complete player. And credit to him, but also credit the scheme because Cliff Kingsbury is calling his ass off. He is calling some fantastic games these last couple. I was pretty underwhelmed the first 2 games of the season, but he's really been dialing it up. He has been just flipping things upside down, getting guys that he normally schemes to one side of the field, flipping it up for one play, airing it out to Terry McLaurin to send the game away in Cincinnati, just annihilate that Cardinal defense. It's been a really nice 2 weeks as a fan of this franchise, a total 180 from what I was saying after 2 weeks, which was that the coaching staff was at fault for a lot of the negatives, especially that terribly coached game against the Giants that we somehow won. But regardless, I do want to talk about the defense because the defense, which I had described and many had described as the worst in football, has been playing really good football the last couple weeks.
I mean, they shut down Kyler Murray and
they shut down the offense. Yeah,
they shut down that offense, which I was surprised because if I'm being honest with you, I had both Kyler Murray and Marvis Harrison Jr. playing in fantasy.
Yeah, same. I also had Marvin a couple of weeks.
I'm like, surely they're probably not good. I'm like, even if the Commanders win, it's probably gonna be like a shootout or something like that.
You would think. But, that's what I thought.
No.
Yeah, the defense has been playing their ass off. I will say the secondary looks a whole lot better. I saw this stat today. Do you even know who? I'm going to say this name. Get ready. Noah Igbenogany. Does this ring a bell? Yeah, who is he?
That last part sounds familiar, but
Yeah, you know why? Famous guy drafted in the first round by the Dolphins in like
there you go.
2021, 2020 maybe. Yeah, he's been, a couple different teams. He was with Dallas for a little while. So, of course, we bring him in. Dan Quinn's got to get all his friends back together. And somehow it's been a great move because when he's seen the field, he has like a top 5 shutdown rate out of corners, which is like passes
Damn.
allowed, which is insane. Like, I don't know what the parameters are there. I just saw it like it was a PFR stat or something.
Yeah.
But like I was like, whoa, really? And I was like, that makes sense. The dude barely, his name is like, no one's throwing to him, which is crazy. And when he does get thrown to, I've seen him making some plays these last couple weeks. So shout out to that guy. But beyond that, the linebacking core looks better, fewer missed tackles. Inside, we've been able to get some decent pressure. We got some really, really nice pressure on Kyler Murray. And of course, his offensive line isn't, amazing or anything, but baby steps, right?
I would say. You got
Yeah.
pressure, which is more than Atlanta did. So
Yeah, that's the truth. There's a couple guys I'm excited about on that line. Johnny Newton looks like he's coming into his own after some injuries, coming back on the field. Maybe a coulda, shoulda, woulda for you guys with Rook Orororo instead of him in the second round.
Tackle for a loss.
No, that's true. He has one TFL, I guess. I wouldn't know. I don't pay
I
attention
don't
to
think
that.
he doesn't have a sack, but I think he has a tackle for the loss.
Yeah. Well, and then him, and then somehow our 7th rounder out of Notre Dame, Jean Baptiste. He got some nice pressure. He's got a sack. He's looking pretty solid as maybe a developmental rotational edge at the least. And that's with a couple guys hurt. He's been able to come in and do some of that. And just overall, situationally, this defense looks like it can really make plays. And it's like that's the first time I've been able to say that in a minute. It's a decently coached unit from what I can tell. Witt Jr. is doing a decent job because Dan Quinn actually isn't calling defensive plays, something that I did not know for a little while. And it seems like they get beat early a lot on early downs, but when they make it inside our own territory, we've been able to clamp up, which is, I think, the most important thing a defense can do is finish a series. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was also looking up Ruka Roror's stats. He doesn't have anything. I lied. He has no tackle for loss. But I have seen him make a tackle, at least.
That's true.
No, but
Dude's going
I'm
to the
so
Hall of Fame.
happy that the Commanders are doing good, because I did live there for a while. They're not my favorite team, obviously, but I do like them.
Soft spot for the Commandos.
I was say nice little soft spot there, and even softer spot for Mr. Daniels, who was having the time of his life.
Have you seen the clips of him and Terry? Like Terry looks so happy.
Terry looks like
it makes me it makes me smile every time I see these clips because he's had to endure like the hell of like Case Keenum, R.I.P. but Dwayne Haskins, like Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke was probably the best of them.
Was he there for Alex Smith for like the 4 games?
He was there for Alex Smith. He was also decent in his time back from getting his leg cut off. But anyways,
but no, he's so happy. And I mean, I don't want to say I don't know about you. I am shocked that his pass, like his completion percentage is as high as it is. It was pretty high in at LSU. But I was also like, well, he also has, 2 first-round receivers all day in the pocket. But I think the combination of just his athletic ability and his ability as a quarterback in general with Cliff King, like, that's going insane right now.
Kingsbury is making it look real easy for him. He is giving him designed runs. He's giving them opportunities to get out of the pocket. The offensive line is doing its job, which is insane. Like, the O-line looks really, really good these past couple weeks.
I was gonna say there's a reason why I said at like the beginning of the season that I think he is that like he was neck and neck with Caleb 1A 1B for that. Obviously we knew Caleb was gonna go first overall, but like I said, talent wise, they were right up next to each other.
Yeah, and you're being proved right now, and it's the happiest I've ever been to be wrong. You know what I mean?
I was just saying, I'm not gonna say like, oh, I'm so cool, I predicted it because I just watched him for an entire season. I'm like, yeah, this dude's good. But we're going to hope that stays the same and hope that stays throughout the entire 4 more weeks or until whatever we review this Commanders team again.
Yeah, so that's been the Commanders. So happy to be watching them. They saved my weekend. Shout out Georgia football. And
sorry.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do?
We'll get you back. We'll get your get back.
Yeah, I hope so. So As far as a couple other teams to just go over real fast before we get into the main attraction of the episode. I don't even think we've said it yet. We are reviewing. Wait, did we say it yet? I don't
No,
even
we did
know.
not.
Yeah, we like talked about it. Oh, we talked about it before we hit record. That's right.
Yeah,
We're doing the 2018 NFL Draft first round. We're going back and reviewing the first round. So before we get into that, just talk about a couple other teams. I got the Chiefs on my list. How about you?
I kind of assumed you were gonna have the Chiefs on your list. Yeah.
Okay, so just to talk about the Chiefs for a second, the synopsis is the defense is playing great, like really, really, really good,
I think we
impressive
can
football.
all agree there. Yeah.
And Mahomes is regressing pretty heavily, and all his receivers are hurt. So, and his
also,
weapons.
Some of that is his fault too. I mean, he literally destroyed Rashid Rice's knee.
Yeah, that was a rough one for you.
Made me very mad. I have him in a lot of fantasy leagues, and I also just think that was a bad play by him in general. You know,
I have kind of a different perspective on it. You've said that it was a really reckless play by him to kind of go after.
I'm not gonna say it was reckless to get it, but it's the diving at the knees thing that always gets me. I'm like,
I don't think he saw Rashid. I think that he turned over, right, to kind of I want to say use gravity and take the returner out with him, sweep his legs, but he just didn't see Rashid coming up behind him to make the tackle and make the punch out, and he gets rewarded with a snapped ACL, which is unfortunate. But
it's like congrats, Rice. Let me destroy your ACL.
Hey, Rashid, good play. What, you say you don't want your ACL anymore? I got you, fam.
I got you. Yeah, no. And I mean, most of the stuff that I was texting you when that happened, I was mainly just mad because he got a big old goose egg in the end, and it was because his own player. Yeah, you know, that's like the last thing you want to do as a teammate is hurt one of your own players. Not like in a way like, oh, you step on their ankle, but in a way like, oh yeah, I just dove straight into his knees.
Yeah.
So
it was
obviously
not pretty.
What you said was true, but I also do think I have a conspiracy about this refs with the Mahomes, and obviously I'm not, you know, whether you like it or not, there might be some little doohickey. But one thing that I was gonna mention was I think Mahomes low-key just knows that there's going to be a PI on some plays, so he just throws it in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I was looking over some things, and I'm like, if I was a quarterback, I can see a holding like right on that receiver. I'm just going to throw it to him and see what happens. And then, boom, he gets the PI call. Like, that's a conspiracy theory there.
I would say that he's just hyper aware of what's happening on the field, and the PI calls, I mean, he's throwing the ball towards tight coverage and hoping to get a call, and a lot of the times he does.
He's looking for it, which I think why there's a lot of PI calls when he throws the ball. Now there are some other questionable things, like Chiefs Falcons game, whatever. But like I do think for a lot of those PIs when people call it, it's like, oh, he gets so many passes overturned or he gets so many D's overturned. It's because he's kind of smart about what he does there. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it for all of them because I have not sat there and watched every single 17 interceptions that quote unquote got pulled back, wherever that stat came from. But
yeah,
like I do think that he is aware of that. But yeah, I think the moral of the story is what we're trying to say though, is that offense looks pretty bad.
It's in rough shape. I think they might make a move to go get a receiver in the next couple of weeks with Rashid likely being out of the season and Hollywood Brown being done for the season until January at least. So their number one receiver right now, aside from Travis Kelce, of course, who seems like he's finally back after his hiatus starting like into the season. Yep. Looks like it's going to be Xavier Worthy, like Xavier Justin Worthy. Watson, yep. and Juju Smith-Schuster's rotting corpse. So
yeah,
I don't know.
They did get Kareem Hunt, which is kind of
that's true. A little, that surprised me. I didn't think they would go in that direction.
I feel like he'll actually be playing pretty well next week, if I'm being honest with you, because. He looked like a dog with the Browns when Chubb was out.
Yeah, he looked really solid. There. I think he'll be a pretty good weapon for them, but we'll see how it goes until then. Is there a team you wanted to talk about?
I'll talk about the one that's in a complete 180 of 4-0, the 0-4 Jags.
Yeah.
Why? Why are they so trash? I wanted to sit here and talk about Brian Thomas Jr. because he's the only bright spot on that entire team, in my opinion.
I figured you wanted to talk about him. You can victory lap that one.
I'm victory lapping that one because obviously the dude is super talented.
Yeah, he looks great.
He's good, and he would be even better if his generational quarterback didn't stop overthrowing the ball to him.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on. I mean, I will say they technically played it close against the Texans. I think it was 2024, right? Yeah.
It was like, yeah.
But I mean, you look at the stat line and like he has 2 touchdowns, 168 yards or something like that, and you're like, okay, but he didn't really look very good. Like there's nothing really to like positive about here apart from your one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You got anything that like I'm just saying other than just a complete dumpster fire? Like
Yeah, the Jags, they don't look very good. The offensive line looks terrible. Trevor Lawrence is under pressure every single play. And when he is, he has not been performing. And I've been saying this for a couple years now. He's got to stop riding the coattails of that one playoff performance. You've got to show me that you can win football games in the regular season. And for the last, like, what, 8 tries, he hasn't. So
yeah.
I think it should be Doug Peterson's neck on the line. He's been calling a terrible game every week so far this year. The coaching staff has just been awful, underperforming. He was asked about his job security after the week, and he goes, "No, why would I be worried?" Which is a hilarious response. I think you probably should, and I know you're not supposed to talk about that.
I think that's a bad question right out the gate.
Terrible question. That's not how you should phrase a question like that. But you've got to understand the fact that if you don't win this week, you're gone. And I think nothing is saving you from the end of the season. I think at this point you are a dead man walking.
0-5 is definitely rough, especially when you have at least on paper, a decent receiving core, a decent running game. You know, I think we both agree that line's obviously not it, but there's that, and then I think their defense isn't like the worst thing on
the
paper.
Defense has some nice players. Their linebacker is on IR, but he's been a really nice. It's Foye Oluokun. I think he's still hanging out, making plays. They've got a couple other standout guys. Again, in the linebacking core, Devin Lloyd's been playing decent football. Andre Sisco's been playing solid football. But it's just tough, man. When everything surrounding the organization, it's like a black cloud, and it's like they just can't get it right. Trevor is not playing up to his standard. The coaching staff is not coaching up to the standard that they need to be at, and I think there needs to be a nuke dropped on this organization in terms of a shakeup. So
yeah, and I mean, it like day by day, it's even harder to defend Trevor Lawrence. Like I still think he has a lot of the talent to be a good quarterback. But dude, like if someone's like, okay, so why do you think he's a good quarterback? I really don't have anything other than just being like, oh, his time at Clemson, he was super good.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that one comeback playoff game where he actually looked like the greatest quarterback of all time. Like
there's been some insane amount of regression since then, and I'm done giving him mulligans if I'm the Jaguars, especially with the bag that I just handed him. I don't know why you would do that after seeing so little at the pro level, but regardless, that's the Jaguars. Very bad, clearly the worst team in the NFL. Somehow they have less wins than the Panthers, Patriots, and Titans after last night. So shout out. So moving on, another team that I want to talk about is the Eagles. Do you have them on your list?
I do.
Okay. So I figured because the Eagles are a really interesting team at this point in the season. It's like, where do you rank them? Are they overrated? Are they underrated? Are they somewhere in the middle? Whose fault is it for the losses? Who isn't to blame? Who's been a bright spot? And really, this is one of the more convoluted organizations right now. I would say that Nick Sirianni is not beating the bad coach allegations. He's been pretty terrible. Yeah. I would say Jalen Hurts is not beating the game manager, rushing quarterback. I only score on tush push allegations. He has been pretty hot and cold so far this season. And I would say the biggest bright spot is the offensive line, still great. Shocking.
Obviously.
Jason Kelce isn't going to, him retiring isn't going to tank an entire unit, though the center position has been up and down since he's been gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're just going to mess up a snap or two like he has.
Yeah, I mean, Juergens is going to he has big shoes to fill, but so far he's been doing a solid job. And Saquon has been a breath of fresh air for this franchise, who has just rotated running backs and made them look like all pros. Shout out Miles Sanders. Shout out DeAndre Swift, who both look terrible in their new spots. Although Swift did have a good game this week. But anyways,
say Swift had the one good game. So
yeah, he had one good game that he's known to have. But
front seven,
the front seven, it's looking pretty hot and cold as well. Yeah. It's just been kind of off and on so far for the defense. The secondary very much
torched pretty badly there.
Yeah, they are a clear negative. Darius Slay's been pretty beat up, and everyone else back there isn't really making plays. Reed Blankenship, from what I've seen, hasn't been enough to save this unit. And it's just a whole lot of, okay, well, but the talent, and it's like, but they made the Super Bowl 2 years ago with mostly the same squad, and it's like, yeah, okay. And then they go, well, their wide receivers have been hurt. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith haven't been playing. And it's like, at a certain point, how many excuses do you have to make to still say this team is good?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either of us are saying that they're necessarily a like bad team or anything. I mean, like if you look around, I think once again on paper the offense, when fully healthy, does look good. But like, it's weird because after you lose this, that, and the other, it's like it really shouldn't be that big of a deal because you still have your base thing. You have your base good, $200 million quarterback in the backfield. You have your once best top five offensive line. Realistically, those two combinations, you could be throwing to me and you and they would somehow still get the ball.
Just about.
I think the Eagles have a very good ownership, very good GM.
Yeah.
I think the fingers are all pointing at Nick Sirianni right now of what the hell is going on.
It looks like it's his neck on the line. And if I'm the Eagles, I look to find a replacement. Because what exactly does he do? Right? He doesn't call defensive plays. He's an offensive guy. He's not calling the offense, despite being an offensive guy. He's not really managing any unit particularly well. I'm not really seeing what positives he contributes to the organization at this point.
Yeah, he's just happy to be there. He's like Dennis Allen, basically, like the same level.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm here because, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the truth, though. I agree.
Dennis Allen's job is still more secure than his is.
No doubt.
Hilarious.
No doubt. Yeah, I would agree, which is not something I'd be saying.
That team's just on fire right now. They in a bad way. They're imploding.
They're on fire in the sense that the office is on fire, the computers are all on fire, the windows are on fire, again, everything's on fire because it's hell.
Yeah.
So not looking good in Philadelphia right now. But hey, as a Commanders fan, keep Sirianni around as long as you want. That sounds awesome to me.
That's fine by me too.
And oh my God, sorry, I just got a vile message from someone. Anyways.
Messages.
Who you got next?
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which one to do. All right, pick a number 1 through 3.
1.
All righty, the Ravens is who I got on the chopping block.
All right.
And I think, obviously they kind of whooped the Bills there at 35-10.
Yes.
Derrick Henry was 199 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, could not get his little yards.
The Ravens are terrible at historic moments.
Yep. Gotta love that. I don't know. This team is also kind of in an interesting view, but unlike how the Eagles are kind of falling off of a cliff, they're in a weird way of they're finally kicking into gear here. I think.
I would say yes.
Exactly. They got their easy win, or not really easy win, but they got their win against the Cowboys, so they could avoid the 0-3. Mm-hmm. And obviously, they just belted the Bills here. And I want to talk about. I don't really know what to talk about here because I think their defense was really bad for those first 2 weeks, if I remember correctly.
The defense was pretty porous, yeah.
They definitely stepped it up to stop a Josh Allen heavy offense. They were able to stop it and shut it almost. I was gonna say shut it down, but they essentially did.
Yeah, they did.
And then meanwhile on that offense, Derrick Henry somehow hasn't regressed.
The dude is
found the fountain of youth somewhere.
Seriously, we need to find out where he's been going for the last couple of years.
I found a stat line where his top speed in that game was only 0.2 off of Xavier Worthy's top speed in his game, and I'm like, but he's 30, and he's also 6'3" and 400 pounds of just solid meat. I don't understand how he's still playing at such an elite level. But honestly, the offense looked pretty good, if I'm remembering correctly. Obviously, they got 35 points. So.
Yeah, the offense is humming. The biggest question mark, and we talked about this in the previous episode when we were discussing the Ravens, at that point, 0-2, was the offensive line. And they lost so many pieces, and it was looking just so out of sync. And it finally looks like they're finding a groove, that the guys are meshing together, and there's still some question marks there. But overall, it has definitely improved from the start of the season, and the defense looks great, especially, like you said, against the Bills, a top 5, top 3, top 1 offense in the league, and they balled out. So the Ravens look real good. They just needed to get into sync, and they are still squarely in the Super Bowl bubble, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say, also side note, unless I'm blanking, Josh Allen has not thrown a pick yet, which is pretty impressive knowing Josh Allen. Just shout out him. 7-0. for touchdowns to interceptions.
That's true.
But
He's
yeah,
locking
no,
in this year.
this team is also very weird because I can't remember Lamar's stat line, but he had like a pretty normal game for him, did he? Or am I playing? Or am I just being wrong there?
The rushing was the main
That's
focus
what I
of the
was
Knights,
remembering.
but he had a couple of touchdown passes, and overall he played a good, efficient football.
Yeah, like I'm just looking at the stats. Like he played accurate, he threw the ball. I mean, but I think this team needs to just definitely focus on the fact that you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield.
Yeah,
Just do whatever you want with those two. Do some good old ground pound offense.
mm-hmm.
And then when you need to, apparently just throw a fastball out to one of your receivers because they don't like using their tight ends. Apparently,
no, they don't. Apparently, Mark Andrews is the biggest casualty of this offensive scheme.
I was gonna say they used likely all of 3 games, and then he's like, you know what? Nah, I'm good. So
Yeah,
they just don't like their tight ends apparently. So who you got on the chopping block?
So I got a couple of the teams, but I was wondering if we maybe eschew the last couple of teams just so we can make sure we get the draft recap.
True. I mean, do you have any? Unless maybe if we have like a mutual team, maybe.
I
had
was
the Raiders and Bears.
Okay, I had the Dolphins and Broncos actually.
Okay.
So maybe we save that for the TikTok. So get ready.
Yeah.
Check out the TikTok for the review of those, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, if I'm being honest with you, the Raiders was just the whole is Adams leaving, and it kind of sounds like it is. And then the Bears was just like, okay, y'all won, but Caleb Williams still didn't look insane.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I was gonna say about there.
Yeah, the Dolphins for me, it was just a lot of people are talking about it right now. It's the how is this team going to be competitive without Tua? It looks like they are laying down the die in every matchup because the offensive scheme is not built for guys other than Tua. And then the Broncos I was going to talk about for having a seemingly really good defense and Bo Nix finally finding 2 wins. So he looks a little bit better, but still not great. Yeah, he still doesn't look that great, but the defense does. So
yeah, piggybacking a little bit off of that Vikings. Sorry, I know, or not Vikings, Dolphins. I do think like Shanahan offenses are very crucial on who is in that team.
I agree.
If like one person gets hurt, it honestly just sends it. Especially if they're like a high point like a tight end, a running back, or a quarterback. I feel like if one of those 3 gets hurt for your team, you're like really cooked.
Adapting inside the Shanahan offense to change is tough.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that pretty wholeheartedly. So, but that is our short review of the last couple of weeks, just a couple sticking points. And something I thought would be a fun exercise is the 2018 draft has been a subject of a lot of attention this year with the quarterbacks. And of course, there's many contributors throughout the draft. So I thought it'd be fun to go back around 6 years after the draft and grade the picks. And we're grading them, this is the first round, of course, and we're grading them not the player, but the team. So before you get mad if we grade a really good player, not like an A, it's probably because their team mismanaged them and they're no longer playing for the team. So
yeah, and I was gonna say if essentially you did not re-sign with your team and I call it like usually rookie contracts are 4 years. So I'm like,
yeah,
if you only stay with the team for 4 years and you immediately left, I'm like you kind of get maybe
you kind of get capped too there.
In my ability, but like you get a little bit of a down because like they left.
Yeah, there's the grade gets capped. Yes. So, kicking off with the first overall pick in the 2018 draft, the Cleveland Browns selected Baker Mayfield, who is currently balling out this year on a great offense in Tampa Bay. So, it's a very interesting pick to grade because, of course, we all know Baker's tenure with the Browns had some distinct highs with the playoff run, the playoff win. Yep. He brought glory to a city in shambles for so long. But he also left the city pretty, he didn't leave on good terms. The villain. Yeah, pretty much.
But with the stop making those insurance videos and get the hell out.
Like. That's true. I kind of forgot about that at home with Baker Mayfield. I forgot about that. So shout out to Baker for being maybe a better actor than he is a football player. But yeah, right now a lot of people in Cleveland, most people in Cleveland, are probably wishing for him to come back. So. But unfortunately,
P. Diddy back there.
Yeah, seriously, they got P. Gritty back there. They had Deshaun Cosby, Groper Cleveland, if you will. Anyways,
with that being said, I'll just give them the grade. I give them a solid D for disaster.
Whoa, Okay, disagree. I very,
Okay.
very much disagree with that pick. I would say that yes, he did not
Plus.
last in his city. However, in the time that he did play football in Cleveland, he brought them to heights that they had never seen as the modern Browns franchise. And I would say that he had some tough years, but also some really good standout years. So all in all, I give him a C plus because while he didn't leave on good terms and he left on a short term, uh, while he was there, he was very impactful at the
And
quarterback
I would
position.
agree with that too for the most part. I'm just mainly giving it a low because you let him leave, and you not let him leave. You basically kicked him out, and I was like, he did that for your team, and in return, you're like, you know,
Yeah,
I think that's just a bad management move right there. I'm assuming they're so used to just getting rid of quarterbacks after 4 years, they're just like, let's just throw another one at the Wolves. So
yeah, I think that's fair. I also, throughout this list, am looking at compensation in terms of how you took your pick and flipped it for something else in terms of if you traded your guy. So that factors into my ranking, not as much, but it is a factor in there. Like if you flip a guy who's good, so that's rough for you, but you get back a contributor at the very least. You get a little aloe for those burns, right?
yeah,
So
but hypothetically, because there is a player that I have in mind, if they got burned on the trade, is that also impacted?
very much so,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And I probably know exactly who you're talking about. So we'll get to them when
Number
we get to them. But
two.
number two, the Giants at number two, against all the odds, took a running back, which at the time, he was probably projected to go that high. But a lot of people were like, whoa, is a running back worth this? And it turns out, yes, very much so. Saquon is really, really, really good. But the Giants no longer employ Saquon Barkley. So that's what's rough right now.
And I will say it's rough, but if you do look at the age thing, like the age analytics thing, it was
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be his last year as a good running back. I don't know how much they got for him off the top of my head. Do you know that?
Well, it was free agency. So
Oh, it
he,
was.
he left
Oh
for
yeah.
nothing.
They just let him walk.
He
I
played
forgot
on the
about that.
tag for a year. Well, on I think it was initially the tag, and then it was like a 1 year something
Yeah.
something deal that people are doing right now. But yeah, yeah.
Well, letting them on the tag. If I yeah, I would say. I mean, obviously, apart from the 1 year he got hurt in 2020, he definitely was the bright spot on that offense. So I'd give him like probably like a solid BB plus area.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ryan. I would say while he was on the field, it was tough to see him injured as often as he was. But while he was on the field, he was a complete game changer for that offense. A dynamic threat that the league had very few of throughout his time. There were very few comparisons that he made to this guy at his position, and he put in a lot of work for a franchise that did not really respect him back. And I will say, as a guy who had his defense trampled by him twice a year, Saquon is a B for me because he's gone now. It's tough that he's gone now, but he did his work in the time that he was in the city. So, and now number three, where things get bad.
Yeah, I would say definitely bad. For those who don't know, Sam Darnold was in fact drafted by the Jets,
Yeah.
this third overall pick. And I don't know about you, but I think this is one of those ones that the Jets kind of regret.
This is one of the ones that the Jets regret pretty heavily, despite
Yeah.
him balling out in Minnesota right now. This does not factor
I'll
into
say
the
no
ranking.
hate to him right now.
Yeah, as a
But once
player,
again,
Sam Darnold is still shaping this grade as we speak. But yeah, in
honestly, he's
terms of the
making the grade
Jets,
worse for the Jets.
yeah, very much so, because it really just shows that it was not the player, it was the place.
Yeah.
And this has layers. This pick has a lot of layers because if you did not know, the Jets began this draft at number 6 overall and actually traded with the Colts up 3 spots to get him, which already you're giving up assets. And I'm not factoring into what those assets became, but rather what you could have used them for, right, in this circumstance. When you're the one that uses assets, yeah, I factor that part in, but you understand. All that to say, they jump up 3 spots to take a quarterback that busted heavily in their city. He was seeing ghosts every night, and they give him up to the Panthers just a couple of years later for, I believe it was a second, a fourth, maybe a fifth or sixth in there. And this trade largely did not do much for the Jets, but right, for the Panthers, it wasn't really great for them either. But the Jets did actually use one of their picks to get Breece Hall from this trade. I don't know if you knew that, but they used one of those picks on a trade up to get Breece Hall, which is just ever so slightly saving them from like the
From a
depths.
complete failure.
Yeah.
They
So
get an F plus.
I'm giving them a D because I do think Brees is a really good game changer as a player, but obviously you're not taking Brees Hall with the number 3 overall pick. This is a terrible, terrible sequence for the Jets, and it just sucks to see him from their perspective just crushing it in Minnesota right now, leading the MVP race, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, Sam Darnold, this is no hate to him. I think he's doing wonders in Minnesota. I don't know why or how, but he is. But yeah, no, this was just a massive fail on the Jets. Like Darnold obviously didn't do good. I could probably give him a D minus. I was not aware of the Brees Hall thing, but if I remember correctly, it'd probably be like that. Did it give up like that second round pick that they got?
It was the second round pick they got in the deal. They traded up a couple spots and got Brees Hall.
And I will say it's also not a good look for the Jets or the Browns when you look back on this because there are some other quarterbacks who were taken off in the first round who are.
That is also opportunity and using a guy. Are you using a pick on a guy who is so much worse than a guy in the same position?
And
that factors in as well.
For the record, I'm only grading it for like if that something like that happens, I'm only grading it assuming they were a first overall pick or a first round pick, and B like they weren't like a different position. So like someone got mad at like the Falcons grading for like not getting TJ Watt, but we didn't get like a edge rusher or something like that. Like if it's just same position, same round, I'm like
I would say if it was like a glaring need, then maybe you can think about that. But it's like overall, if you're graphing, especially if it's quarterback, you're targeting a quarterback, right? So
So that's all I gotta say about that for the most part.
Yeah. So that being said, that's been Sam Darnold. Number 4, Cleveland's back on the board, which was a crazy sequence for them coming into this draft. 2 top 4 picks. And with it, they take Denzel Ward, the corner out of Ohio State. And he has been largely a shutdown corner and one of the best in football since he's been in the league. He's gotten a pretty big payday since he has been drafted, still balling out in Cleveland, of course. It's been tough to see how much he's been off the field, not playing due to injury. But when he's on the field, he's been largely the best contributor on that defense outside of Myles Garrett. And I'm giving them an A for the pick. I think it's been really, really nice.
Yeah, I think this was the slam dunk A. You know, this is kind of the gold standard for this draft of they did good, they have still been good, they survived their rookie contract, and they're still on the team. That's what gets you an A.
I would say that's pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah, like, I think that's an easy A. We can go on now.
So, at number 5, Bradley Chubb is a very interesting situation because Denver takes an edge rusher at 5. NC State product. It's one of the best pick announcements that I've ever watched. Shout out to that guy. It was like a Make-A-Wish announcement, I think, and I can still literally hear the guy doing it. Like, he crushed it. So, shout out him, whoever that was. I don't have a name. But Denver sorely needed help on the edge, and they get a guy who was clearly a contributor, very, very good player. And contracts just don't work out. He was pretty often injured, and Denver decided it was the best for them to move off of him, give him to Miami. What's interesting is the whole web we weave with that trade. For Denver, at least. For Miami, it gets even crazier, but we'll put that aside.
Bradley Chubb. Yeah, no.
We'll put that aside, the Miami portion, but largely what was effective in that trade is after 4-ish years of Bradley Chubb, which was mostly really, really good play while he was healthy, you get a first-round pick. You get a first-round pick and some other compensation, some pick swaps. Those largely were inconsequential. This first-round pick turned into Brian Brzee, who plays for the Saints. And the reason that pick ended up with the Saints is the Sean Payton trade, which they gave up a first-round pick and some other stuff to get Sean Payton's rights from the Saints.
I believe it was a first and a third. Maybe a second. But it was like...
It was something like that. It was a hefty price for a coach who is not the most favored guy right now in the city of Denver. And that's where it's really up to interpretation, because it's like, how did the number 5 overall pick Bradley Chubb turn into, is Sean Payton a good coach? But I will say overall, I don't really like how you managed the asset. I would have liked to see it go somewhere else. I would like to see Bradley Chubb still on the team, actually, because he is still like a contributing solid edge rusher in Miami.
When healthy, yep.
When healthy, of course, because he still hasn't been. But I'm going to give this a C- solely because I think Sean Payton, while he's not terrible, some people are like, he's the worst coach in the NFL. I'm like, chill out. He does some good things. The defense is looking really nice, but he's been fighting with players, fighting with coaching staff, and that offense has looked pretty terrible. And he was the one that pretty much orchestrated the Bo Nix pick, who does not look good either.
Yeah, and I mean, he was even flaunting about being like, "Oh, we tricked them. We wanted Bo Nix. That was our guy." Like,
I saw that too. Yeah,
and being a person who also had to play against Sean Payton a lot, he's not a cool guy. He's not a good guy. I think he just got right place, right time with having the legendary name of Drew Brees as his quarterback, and he was able to capitalize it. Like, big whoop. I kind of did forget about that, and because I originally had this at being like a C plus B minus. But remembering now that Sean Payton is somehow in line with this Bradley Chubb trade, I do want to drop that down to a C minus. Because I do think that years that he was there, he did production. I mean, his rookie year was his best with 12 sacks. And then they actually weirdly switched him to a right backer. He was a left guy, and then moved him, and he still did pretty good, but there was still a noticeable decrease. But
yeah, it was tough coming off a torn ACL, coming off a bunch of other injuries. But overall, he's still a contributor. And if I was the Broncos, I would rather have him on my team than Sean Payton coaching the whole deal. So
at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So that's been number 5. At number 6, we get one of the more straightforward slam dunks of this draft. Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame goes to the Colts. They trade down, get some assets, and then get one of the premier offensive linemen in this league. And now this might seem like a pretty low grade for him. I'm giving him an A-, and here's why. It's not an A or A+ simply because he has regressed. And at this point, there is like clear regression from his rookie to second to third, and here we are, years, of course. And he is still really solid, but he was like an all-pro as a rookie and really solid. While is desirable, is, it's like hopefully that he's not on like the crazy decline. So I'm going to be a little weary about this one and give him an A-, but it was still an A. It's still like, in that territory. It was a great pick.
An A is an A.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like you said, kind of slam dunk pick. I also give him an A. To your point, in my opinion, this would have been an A+ if he didn't regress, but
he was still performing like he was for a second year. Then this would be the easiest grade, but
yeah, I mean, it's a slam dunk. I mean, he's played 6 straight seasons. I don't think he's gotten hurt in any of those.
Minimal injury, yeah.
I say minimum injury, so he stayed healthy. And honestly, as like a lineman, you really get like counted for 2 things. It's like how many holding penalties did you get, and how many times have you been hurt for long periods of time. And he does great on both of those. I'm pretty sure it was either him or the guy. Remind me who's the guard for the tackle or for the Cowboys right now?
For the Cowboys? Oh, Zach Martin.
There we go. Yeah, Zach Martin.
Yeah.
One of those two had more like sacks given up than holding calls, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, both those guys.
It was Zach Martin, but yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured. But yeah,
so that's Quentin Nelson. Pretty easy pick there. At 7, another slam dunk. The Bills get Josh Allen here. We all know he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He can't, hurdle over Mahomes yet, but he is really, really good at playing the game of football, and he has revolutionized the sport in a city that really needed it. So this is an A+. No further commentary from me.
Yeah, A+. He cool.
He's okay.
No, but no, yeah, he's all right. He's all right. Just slowly turn into, he's terrible. A+.
Yeah.
No, I think you said everything, hit the points. It's Josh Allen. We all know who he is.
Yeah.
A+. Shout out Buffalo for taking a risk on he wasn't technically a D2 team, right? He was just like
it's not D2. D1. It's just not like it's a group of 5 team.
Yeah, it's not like a major school. So shout out Buffalo for taking a risk on that. It clearly hit.
So at number 8, the Bears take a linebacker, which is not normally seen nowadays, which is kind of crazy to say. It's only been 6 years, but this is so out of left field compared to what we see nowadays in the first round. But regardless, off-ball linebackers, not popular. And Chicago took one of the best in the game today, Roquan Smith, which is interesting because he now plays in Baltimore. Out of Georgia, by the way. Shout out. He's awesome. He's a dog. And this one's interesting because it really is up to interpretation of how you view his situation in Chicago. He did not want to play there anymore. Chicago did not want to pay him. They were both understanding of the situation and decided that the best way to move forward was a trade. And this is one of those situations where I can say, fine, you really, really gave it your all while it's your time in the city, and it just didn't work out for the future. And from that trade, I actually dove into this just a little bit. They didn't get too much. It was a second, a fourth, and then some other inconsequential stuff. But 2 guys are on the roster right now in Chicago from that trade. One of them is a rotational backup safety who is in his second year. And the other is a rotational edge rusher by the name of Gervon, Gervon. Pronounce that how you wish. I don't know. I didn't look it up. Dexter. And he, in 4 games, has 3 sacks and quite a decent number of pressures. And like, I didn't know who this guy was. Haven't really been paying attention to the finer details of Chicago Bears football this season. But the dude looks like he's really solid out of, I believe it was Florida State in the second round of the 2023 draft. So if he ends up being a difference maker on defense as a result of this trade, it's really not too bad of value for Chicago to, not have to pay a guy like Roquan and then still end up a really good defense down the line. So all that yapping to say, I would give the pick a B.
Yeah, and I think a B, is pretty fair. Like you said, weird getting a linebacker in the first round, but this is definitely a guy who has the talent to be first round coming out of college, especially with that Georgia background.
Yes.
And just looking at the stats, if you just look at the stats alone, as a middle linebacker, he's consistently got an interception, has a bunch of tackles. That's basically all you need from a linebacker. But if you look at film, he also looks fantastic there. So I'd say definitely a B. It's just unfortunate that they both kind of just didn't want a long-term deal like that. So
yeah. And it was an amicable choice to move forward separately, which I feel
it made more sense for the Bears just to be like, yeah, we have to let you go.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we let you go because you're bad. It's just you don't want to really play for us, and we don't want to pay you that much. So
exactly. So at number 9, rounding out our top 10 here in a minute, another Notre Dame offensive lineman goes off the board with Mike McGlinchey to the 49ers. And this one is pretty straightforward to me. He was a starter for 4 or 5 years. I don't remember. And he was mostly fine. And then he left and got paid by Denver, who, he's not anything super special, but he's good enough to get a decent contract from another team that values him more and has the money to spend. And I would just say that that's a fine pick. But for a 9th overall pick, I'm not super impressed by that. He's not on your team anymore. But he did get a bag elsewhere, which shows that he has talent. So I gave him a C. I don't know if you view this the same way.
I was gonna say it's weird once again ranking linemen, but with it still being a top 10 pick, you'd kind of expect them to be a long-term guy, and that's usually what your first round linemen have in mind. They're these are going to be guys who stay with them until they retire or get injured out of the league. So the fact that he didn't do that for the Niners is kind of sad, but you could still tell he was a solid starter for them. And I think C is kind of that good definition of he lived out his part moderately well, So I'd also say C.
And then at the 10 spot comes the biggest bust of the draft. Josh Rosen, Chosen Rosen, goes number 10 at a UCLA to the Cardinals in need of a quarterback. And a year later, he was playing football in a different city. And a year later, he was playing football on practice squads. For the Shanghai Sharks. Yes, exactly. For the Guangdong Tigers. And it's an F. Not much else to say there.
It's an F.
I did look into the trade, though. I don't know if you looked at the trade, because he did. He was traded to Miami for a second-round pick and then some other stuff. And I was looking into the trade, and it ended up being almost nothing. The second was sent back to Miami for Kenyon Drake, I think, and he then left the city a year later, so it does nothing to move me here. Even the trade, the Cardinals didn't even get anything really of value.
Yeah, and Josh Rosen remembered Josh Allen and Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and he's now watching them on Sundays while he's just sitting on the couch. So
yeah, there are 9 mistakes made ahead of me, and now the Cardinals have 256 regrets or however many other picks there were.
Yep.
So shout out. F, obviously, F-. At 11 is the most interesting situation in the draft when
I
grading picks
yeah.
because Minka Fitzpatrick, who has been a consistent All-Pro and top 5 safety for the past like 3-4 seasons in Pittsburgh, was drafted by Miami. And after one season of mostly mediocre football on like the tank for Tua Miami Dolphins, people were saying it could be some of the worst, one of the worst teams we've ever seen assembled. He was traded for a first round pick, actually, and some other stuff, some pick swaps that didn't really matter. And out of that deal, the Dolphins ended up picking Austin Jackson, a current right tackle still on the roster who is starting. And nothing else really came out of the deal other than Minka being one of the best safeties in football. And you give him up after one season to go draft one of the worst current starters in the NFL at right tackle. So this might seem harsh, but this is a D minus pick from the Dolphins.
I definitely said a solid D. I mean, you gave him 1 year, and I mean, he didn't then traded him for a very sub below tackle. Like it's definitely just it's a weird thing because obviously the Steelers on this if they drafted him be like an A plus, but like they didn't. So I think that was just a bad team thing, just being like, yeah, you're gone. And I think D minus is very appropriate for the Dolphins here.
It's just a horrible management of assets there.
But just for the record, Minka Fitzpatrick is good. Don't think we're not saying
that. That's great. Has everything to do with the Dolphins and nothing with him.
I was gonna say the one person who's gonna be like, hey,
they think Minka sucks.
Yeah, it's like no.
Yeah,
stop.
Not about you. So at 12, the Buccaneers needed a presence at defensive tackle and get big man on campus Vita Vea out of Washington. And for those unaware of Vita Vea's game, the dude is a wrecking ball. And I was one of the biggest Vita Vea guys. He is like a game changer. Like when he's on the field versus when he's off the field, that defense looks so different. And it has for years. He's been a contributor all the way back to the Tom Brady Super Bowl and before. And he's like one of those underrated players in the league to me consistently. He's one of the best defensive tackles in football that never gets talked about. I would give this pick an A. Yeah, literally.
I'd say Big Vince and him, definitely an A. Like, stayed with the team. Great. Big dude. Dude's also fast. I said that previously, but dude somehow is like scary fast.
He can burn some rubber for sure.
Yeah, when needed. I mean, he might need oxygen afterwards, but like when needed for a broken haul,
he can turn into gear for sure.
Absolutely insane. But how would you talk about what the Washington?
So at 13, the Washington Redskins, at the time, they were still the Washington Redskins. They took another defensive tackle back to back out of Alabama, Daron Payne, who is still on the team, has received a big contract, had some standout years, but as of these last couple, has not been too much of a difference maker. Of course he is, but for the money that he's been making, it's been kind of underwhelming. But overall, I've got to paint this with broad strokes and just say, at 13, you got a really, really good defensive tackle who is consistently in top 10 talks and is always getting pressure on the quarterback. That is an A- to me.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you got the contract. It's been pretty solid for the team. That's kind of the baseline for at least an A. So I'd give it an A. A-.
All right.
Sorry, A-, but same difference.
Yeah. At 14, the most interesting pick to this point to me, it was Marcus Davenport, edge rusher out of University of Texas, San Antonio. And the Saints move up in this draft. I remember this when it happened. They traded a first-round pick, typical to trade up in the first round to swap first rounders, but they gave up an extra one the year following to go get this like project rotational raw talent at edge rusher. And do you know where Marcus Davenport is playing right now off the top of your head? I could tell you. Yeah, not the Saints. It's the Lions, and he is currently on IR with a torn something. I don't remember. But these last couple of years he's been bouncing around. He was with Minnesota. And overall, he has been disappointing. He's has some standout moments, right? There was a season, I believe it was his contract year with the Saints, where, he had a really nice season, 9-sack year. You really saw flashes of the guy the Saints traded up for, but overall not with the franchise anymore, and you gave up another first-round pick to go up and get him. So to me, this is a D-plus pick.
Yeah, I'd give it a D plus, C minus range. I mean, like I said, there was one year where he did really well. And then apart from that, his rookie year and his sophomore year, he did decent as well. Nothing like eye popping for being, that first round talent that you said you gave up 2 picks for him, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you did a pick swap and then a next year pick.
Yeah.
That always makes it look like a bad look.
Yeah.
If this was a straight up pick for him, I wouldn't have probably said anything too bad. But because of that, yeah, I think D, C minus is like roughly where it is.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. So at 15, the Raiders make one of the more underrated picks in this draft. A guy by the name of Colton Miller, offensive tackle out of UCLA, who is still balling out with the Raiders. Like, the dude is one of the most underrated offensive linemen in the game, and has been consistently anchoring the unit since he was drafted. And he had a bit of an up and down rookie season, but ever since that, he's found his footing, and he's been playing some really, really good football for this organization. So to me, the pick is an A. I don't really have any qualms with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he hits the checks. He's still with the team, and he's done really well. Like, I mean, that feels very.
That's
very
the blueprint,
like
right?
I would say it's the blueprint. He's been a cornerstone for that team, and definitely, yeah, easy A.
So at 16, rounding out our top half, the Bills are back up again. They trade up once again and take linebacker Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech. And this one is a little tougher to grade because while he is no longer with the team, that defense was great for a long time with him on board. And he did, like Mike McGlinchey, just to compare him to another guy from this class, he did go to another team in free agency and end up getting a big bag, in his case being the Bears. And overall, he played some pretty good football in Buffalo and he contributed to a top 5 defensive unit for years. And, it's tough to see him leave for no compensation. But if I'm the Bills, I'm not paying him the money that he got. I'm moving forward without him. And I'm thanking him for the contributions that he made to the city. So I'm giving this a B minus. I think it's like a fair pick that did not, end up as
I gave him a B. I mean, I might maybe I have a little bit more value in him just because middle linebackers are often the play callers, and I don't know if he was a play caller or not. But obviously, we just said that defense when he was there was really good, and could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was a noticeable decline once he left. But yeah, no, he played good for them. They just didn't want to re-sign him. Yeah, I think a solid B.
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
At 17, during this draft, like, no one could believe that this guy was slipping this far. He was like a projected top 8 pick, and the Chargers get him at 17. It's Derwin James out of Florida State, the safety. And he has had kind of a rougher career for a guy with his talent because he's an all-pro, one of the best safeties in football, but the dude has struggled with injuries pretty much his whole career. That said, I'm giving him an A- just because we know what he is. They got him for a great price relative to his draft stock. And when he's on the field, he's obviously a difference maker, though he does have a tendency to lead with the helmet, and he needs to chill out because he's had some pretty rough hits these last couple of weeks. He's suspended actually for I don't remember if
one game.
It was just this one game, right?
Yeah.
So he's back now, but the league clearly has an eye on him, so he's got to chill. But other than that, I'm giving the pick an A-.
Yeah, let's say A- is also what I have him. He had a stellar rookie year, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he did really well then, and just the injury thing is the biggest concern. But the dude plays good. He hits hard. Pro needs to chill out with the tackles sometimes, but yeah. I mean, and he's still on the team, so I'd say
it's about all we can ask for.
I would say pretty easy, A-.
Yeah, I would say so. At 18 comes one of the most successful picks of this draft. Jair Alexander goes to the Packers at 18 out of Louisville, and we all know who this guy is if you're an NFL fan. This guy is consistently in top 1 cornerback discussions, and simply because of that, it is an A+ off the bat. You get a guy like that at 18 in this draft. Other corners, other corner were drafted ahead of him. Other defensive backs were drafted ahead of him. And you get a guy like this in the back half of the first round. That's a fantastic pick. He's consistently been balling out in the city. It's an A+.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jerry Alexander is definitely a definition of A+. Like we said, top 5 position consistently. Stayed with the team. Checks off all those boxes. What else you can say? He's been good.
Exactly.
And you got him, unlike Josh Allen, who was pick number 7, who was our other A+. You got him in 18, which most people would say that's a steal.
So, I agree. So one of the more sad picks of this draft is at 19, the Cowboys took Leighton Vander Esch, another inside linebacker out of Boise State. And this one is really, really tough to grade because as a rookie, he was an all-pro. But as we speak, he is not on an NFL roster. He had one of the sharpest declines we'd ever seen, and it's mostly due to injury. And it's really sad to see. He's like a Luke Kuechly case with the concussions and out of the league now.
Back last year, right?
Yeah, and it was his back that did him in. He had like chronic back issues. He tried with surgery, and he just decided to medically retire, which is really sad to see. But yeah, it's that Luke Kuechly level of injury that just nags at you, and unfortunately forced to do him in. But I am going to choose to look at what we saw from him before this injury. Crazy sharp decline from his rookie year. And it looked like he had sort of a bounce back with the Cowboys around 2022. But overall, I'm giving the pick a C because he had some stellar years, but is no longer on an NFL roster. So
yeah, and like I said, I always hate being like the injuries is the reason why this pick turns out to be bad, because those are things you can really predict. So I felt a little bit more lenient, especially with him retiring because of injury, not like getting cut from the team or anything like that. Just the dude couldn't stay healthy. And to your point, really good his rookie year. So I give it a B-. But yeah, it's
I can
an
understand.
unfortunate circumstance.
I can understand for sure. So at 20, getting into the 20s, finally, the Lions take a mainstay on their line nowadays, the anchor. You know him, you love him, the center yourself, Ryan, so you can appreciate him. It's Frank Ragnow. Shout out to Connor if you're watching this. Frank Ragnow is an A of a pick because if you go get a guy that consistently anchors your line, protects your quarterback, is a constant bright spot, barely ever misses games. He literally just did this week his first game ever as a pro, I believe he's ever missed. And that's just an A.
Yeah, I do think you might be forgetting. I think he was injured 2021. I think.
Was he out for the whole year?
No, but he played. I think he played like 4 or 5 games, and then
really
he was injured.
That's all me, Coach.
No, who really cares? Like I would say no. Obviously, Frank Ragnow, A. Like he's goated. He's awesome.
He's great.
Now since Kelsey's out of the league, he's probably the number 1 guy that you can talk about.
He even with Kelsey in the league, he'd been vying for the number 1 center spot for years.
It's no longer a bona fide, number 2. He's fighting for that number 1 spot. Because like me and you, I think we both agree that it was very 1A, 1B there with them. But like most common knowledge was, Kelsey's the best center.
Get there. There you go.
Best center.
Yeah.
Frank is now up there with the conversation of best center in the league. The only other guy that comes to mind in my mind is Creed, but I still think
I was thinking about him too, but Frank is a difference maker on a team that has valued him pretty heavily since he's been there. He's awesome. Yeah. He's an A.
Easy A. I almost want to put him at A+, but
I'll hold back just a touch, but yeah, he's fantastic. And we get to his polar opposite, the pick later, also a center, Billy Price out of Ohio State. Being a Buckeye fan growing up, this hurts, but he is the definition of an F. Terrible. Every game he started, he was a liability, and he's done with football. He was with the Giants for like a little bit, and then even they, on a line that at the time, and still even now, not great, but at the time especially, was like worse than football caliber. They were like, you are a bum. So that's kind of the biggest judger of you suck.
For a line that was the Bengals for being one of the worst lines ever.
Yeah, the Bengals and the Giants both rejecting
still
you.
Cutting him. Definitely not a good look there. That's a certified F.
Mm-hmm. He
Honestly,
is terrible.
it could be an F minus. Like that's trash.
Yeah, Cincinnati did not make a very smart pick there. At 22, another tough one. Rashaan Evans out of Alabama, another linebacker. This draft was full of them. Tennessee gets him there, and this one's tougher because he did have some flashes. He did have some highlight moments while he was with Tennessee, but he is no longer with Tennessee. He's no longer on an NFL roster. And the last time he saw an NFL field was with the Dallas practice squad, where he was dismissed because of marijuana charges. So when that was, of course, a more stingy thing with the NFL, sports in general, not to get into that. But yeah, that being the lasting impact that you have in the league, I mean, this just goes to show he was a starter for a couple years there in Tennessee.
His best year was in Atlanta, if I remember correctly.
He was with Atlanta as well after
his last year before going to Dallas.
Yeah, after Tennessee, he thought maybe his career could kind of resurgence, but as far as his time in Tennessee goes, he was nothing more than a body to fill at the starting spot there at linebacker. I gave him a D minus.
Yeah, I give him a D. He gets the slight minus wave because he did do actually kind of decent in Atlanta with tackling.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all he really did there. But yeah, no, I mean, dude was just like a okay starter at best most of the time.
Yeah. Okay starter at best is
it's hard to grade those linebackers. But
yeah, definitely, because it's like the impactful nature. Well, it's like how impactful are they is kind of tough, and it's like relative to other positions. It's like do you value them more or less or whatever. But yeah, I think we can agree. Not a great pick there by Tennessee. At 23, another Bulldog comes off the board. Isaiah Wynn goes to New England, and this one is another tough one in terms of injury because the man just could not stay on the field. When he was on the field in New England, some argued he was one of the better tackles in football, but he just simply could not stay on the field. And eventually he wound up in Miami, where he is now on the PUP, shockingly not able to play football because he's hurt. And it hurts me to say this, but I got to give him a D plus as a pick because in the few moments where he did see the field, there was there was some potential there for like.
Did you say B plus?
D plus.
D plus. Okay, I was like, wait, what do you mean B plus?
Yeah. He was a D plus. Let's clarify.
Yeah, I gave it a solid D. I mean, being a lineman, one of the last things they're supposed to do is get hurt. Now, obviously, that's not like a thing you can super control, but you have to do everything in your ability to stay on the field.
Yeah,
and that alone is just enough to not get you anywhere as a lineman. So
yeah.
Anyway,
at 24,
the interesting one.
At 24, this is the pick that comes into question of how far do we go down the rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Because at 24, there was a debate between receivers in this draft. Who should go first? Is it DJ Moore? Is it Calvin Ridley? And the Panthers decided on the former, taking DJ Moore out of Maryland. And he is no longer with the team. But while he was in Carolina, clearly one of the better receivers in football, underrated his whole way through. Bordering on top 10, usually top 15 territory. Overall, a positive contributor, a guy that you'd want on your team. And the Bears said, we want him. Yeah. And the Bears said, we want him on our team. And you know what else we want? We want 1 million first-round picks. But in exchange, you get to draft Bryce Young. So this just is like an exercise in how far do you want to credit this pick for the Panthers currently being one of, if not the worst teams in football, and having drafted Bryce Young to currently be a backup quarterback.
It's really difficult. I'm gonna hit you with that. I don't know, Jim, because Tony Romo has a point there. On one side, you're like, okay, obviously DJ Moore is an insanely good receiver and did really good for them for his entire contract.
Yeah.
And then you trade him instead of keeping him. You trade him and get essentially a backup in return. So I really want to be mean here and give the Panthers like a D. And honestly, you know what? I'm going to.
Wow, I didn't think you were going to.
Because that was terrible. That was terrible.
Yeah. I will value more the time and effort that DJ Moore put into the city, because while he was there in his years with the
He was a
team,
dog.
he was a contributor. He was very, very, very good. So I will only give the Panthers a C for this one.
I was also
Consider
thinking
yourselves
C,
lucky.
but yeah, I was thinking a C because I'm like, it probably cancels out. You know, you get 4 years or 5 years of extreme top 10 talent for a receiver, but then that's rough. Not
Yeah,
only
that's a
trading
tough
him,
one. I'm not going to blame DJ Moore for the drafting of Bryce Young, but once again, this is on your organization, not the guy as a player. So
yeah, DJ Moore's a dog.
terrible use of resources.
Terrible
This trade
move.
sent the franchise back a decade, but we will be lenient there. At 25 is one of the lesser known first round picks, I feel like, and Hayden Hurst, tight end out of South Carolina, our first tight end off the board, goes to Baltimore. And this guy gets overshadowed by another guy in the same draft class. In the third round of this draft, the Ravens found Mark Andrews.
Yep.
So it's like, why do we care about Hayden Hurst? And the truth is, we don't. The dude has been hopping around teams. He had a pretty tragic injury, and he has made his way back to football. I believe he's with the Chargers at this point. But pretty much his whole career, he's just been fun. He contributed in Cincinnati. He contributed, I believe it was in Atlanta.
He was actually kind of a dog in Atlanta.
He was pretty good in Atlanta. I do remember that.
His first season.
He was pretty nuts in Atlanta, but in his time in Baltimore, he was a non-factor, completely overshadowed by Mark Andrews. So I'm forced to give this pick a first-round pick that you use 6 picks ahead of the guy that really could have used someone else to help him out. It's a D for me.
Yeah, I think a D is very, it's like, okay, he did fine for y'all, but you only had him for 2 years, and he got outshined by Mark Andrews, who you got in the third round, right? Third round?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think a D is pretty kind of like it's not like terrible for the Ravens because obviously they still found their tight end, or maybe not now since Mark Andrews is apparently
maybe
really
he's
good
terrible
at sitting on the bench. But honestly, I think a D is very appropriate.
So at 26, Mr. FanDuel, why don't you take this one, buddy?
I'm so torn. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm so torn.
Yeah.
Because you look at the stats, okay, and remember Julio Jones is still our wide receiver 1 up until 2020, if I remember correctly.
Right about. Yep.
2020 was the last season he was there. And dude had a 1,300-yard season in 2020 with Julio. Super cool. The next year, dude did not play a whole lot. And he did not play the year after for us. And then he left.
Yep.
I'm so torn, if I'm being honest with you. Dude was a touchdown machine for his first 3 seasons. I'd have to give him like a C+ for Atlanta, I think. I think it was a really good quality. It was a good pick, but it was one of those ones where it just turned out so, like, everything that went wrong.
Yeah, I would say that I actually ended up giving us the same grade as the other wide receiver. He was selected just behind with another C because he did have some nice years contributing to the franchise and was overall traded for nothing. In that trade, I looked into it just a little bit, and the biggest contributing thing that happened for Atlanta as a result of that trade was the picks being used in another trade to get Jeff Okudah, who is no longer on that team.
I was say who also did decent for 1 year and then left.
Exactly. So I will give it a C just because it's another weird, unfortunate situation with the sports gambling and the mental health, but no, it was just sports gambling. And
it's unfortunate for the Falcons.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for the Falcons. So it's like I'll cut them a little bit of slack, and I'll give them a C. But the team that does not get cut any slack at all for this pick, so the Seahawks at this point were really lacking on a lot of different areas as a consistent playoff contender, trying to squeeze the last they could out of Russell Wilson before he ended up as kind of a washed-up veteran a couple of years later. They take a running back, a position that they already had locked down. It was Rashad Penny out of San Diego State, who definitely had some flashes. And I would say during his time in the league, he looked like he could be a potential star. But the dude just simply could not stay on the field. And when we've said this a couple times about some of these guys, this dude just seriously, every single game he touched the field, it just seemed like his ACLs exploded, his hamstring pops, his shoulder comes out of socket, something. He just could not stay on the field.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, dude got a splinter and he's out for 4 weeks. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what you're gonna give him, but I was gonna say, like, almost like a C minus. Like,
I'm more harsh than this. I gave the guy a D.
Dang.
Yeah.
Damn, I see you. No, I mean, I think that's totally fair. Dude, like, looked good for some games and then was just, like, a non-factor for others.
Yeah.
Plus being hurt, that definitely doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because you don't want to, the injuries, it's tough to attribute, lack of production just to injury. But you also just look at the pick on a baseline. The Seahawks didn't need a running back at all. Like, why are you taking him? You had Chris Carson and a couple other guys manning the backfield, solid starters, and you take a running back when you had so many other positions of need at the time. And the guy you took just doesn't pan out in the slightest, ends up leaving and is no longer rostered. That's a D from me, just because he had like maybe 4 games where he looked like he was going to be the future of the franchise. So shout out to those 4 like games that happened. Because he was started in fantasy for like 4 games, and then he sucked and got hurt, and then was no longer viable.
So the next pick is definitely a weird one, if I do say so myself.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's a brother that gets drafted in the first round. 2 brothers. It's the other Edmonds. It's Terrell, the safety, once again out of Virginia Tech. Pittsburgh takes him at 28. And Terrell, I would definitely say, is the lesser of the 2. The Steelers got the lesser of the 2 brothers, though he still did contribute in the Steel City for a little while. I would say, though, bouncing around teams these last couple of years, he's been in Philadelphia, he's been in a couple other spots. I'm giving the pick. Though. Yeah, let's hear it.
He is back in Pittsburgh.
Oh, that's right. He did find himself back in Pittsburgh. I did see that. So
wandered back there.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that he technically is still with the city that drafted him, but I'm not going to choose to look at that too closely. No, I'm giving him a C minus, just because he's kind of a lower tier starter, rotational guy that you take in the first round that didn't get a second contract with you until like 3 years later.
Yeah, until he went on his little adventure and then realized, hey, I should probably come back.
Yeah,
I think a C minus is very appropriate here. Just there's not a whole lot to say,
Yeah, unfortunately,
it's hard grading defensive guys too, because most of the time their stats, unless you like actively watch the film, the stats are just
don't show it all. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, overall, I think a C minus is pretty appropriate there.
Yeah. So at 29, I actually remember this pick, which was crazy because no one knows who this guy is. No one really cared about this pick, and for good reason. He barely played. 29, the Jags, coming off the Saxonville season, get some more help for the pass rush in Taven Bryan, a defensive tackle out of Florida. And he started a couple games, and then started a couple less, and then fell out of the rotation, and then got cut. It just was a really short, unceremonious end for him. Though he does right now find himself starting games in Indianapolis, which probably goes to show. And it has filled the stats sheet, I guess, technically. Though I would say that's more of a credit to the lack of depth on that defensive line than it is the talent that Taven Bryan possesses. But as far as it goes in Jacksonville, he didn't start a single game his final year there, barely registered anything on the stat sheet. And because of that, I'm forced to give him a D minus.
Yeah, I think a D minus is very appropriate. There's not really much to say other than dude just didn't play a whole lot, and then I looked it up. He is a total of 5.5 sacks over 4 years.
Yeah,
so just about a sack and a quarter per season.
Not the type of production you're trying to get out of a first
round talent. Yeah, so I think D minus. Pretty on the nose there.
Not great production out of Taven Bryan. So another terrible pick to add to the Jacksonville Shad Khan trade bulky regime, whatever. At 30, Minnesota gets cornerback Mike Hughes, who is a similar story, I would say, to Taven Bryan, maybe more similar to Terrell Edmonds in terms of defensive backs. He's been bouncing around these last couple of years, was somewhat productive in a couple other cities, like in Kansas City. He was okay. Currently finds himself starting in Atlanta and is doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, his first year was definitely more of a liability. If I'm being honest with you, I'm pretty sure Hughes was the guy who almost always ended up getting torched on
Yeah,
teams.
but so far through 4 games, he hasn't
But
been
four
that
games,
terrible.
he's actually been able to be a pretty solid. He's definitely a tackler. I can tell you that. Definitely,
Mm-hmm.
dude can tackle. Now, hopefully, we're trying to get him to tackle before the ball's in like the hand. Just like swat it away or something like that. Not like
yeah.
He's pulling a lot of like LSU style cornerback play where it's like, oh, we're really good at tackling them after they make the catch.
Exactly right.
So hopefully he's getting better at that, and it looks like he has. But yeah, as a Viking, he didn't really do a whole lot other than just exist. I think like a D probably.
Yeah, I agree with you. I give him a D. It's tough because with the Vikings, he was starting a couple games and then he kind of fell out of rotation, wasn't putting as much on the stat sheet, and wound up out of town. So just a tough story. Not a first round pick there. Not the value you want. It's a D. And now for one of the funniest picks of the first round, New England's back on the board after taking an offensive player, the most New England pick you could make on offense, going to the line. New England totally 180s and does something they almost never do and takes a skill position player in the first round. 2 running backs out of Georgia were really highly regarded, and Sony Michel becomes the first one off the board at 31, and he's currently retired. So this is interesting because he got to the league and won a Super Bowl and went to another. He won 2. I was gonna say, did he win 2? It was the one with the Patriots, and then did he win another one with the Rams?
Did he win with the Rams? Oh shoot, I totally forgot he was with the Rams. Hold on, you keep talking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I thought he maybe got to another one. I wasn't sure if he won it with the Rams. Fell out of the league.
With the Rams.
Yeah, fell out of the league and retired all before Sam Darnold turned 24. So it's like, what a short but successful accolade-wise career he had.
2 years, he did good.
Yeah,
13 touchdowns in 2 years.
Exactly. It was such a steep fall off for a guy who, looked like he could be a solid mainstay at his position in New England, where they had kind of a rotating cast of characters. He finally becomes more of a solid piece that we can count on in New England. And I will give him credit. He was a very big contributor towards a Super Bowl run. But at the same time, he's not employed with his team or any team and is officially retired as of 2 years ago. He had a really, really short career. So unfortunately for another Bulldog, I have to go in the D range, and to give him a D+.
I was going to give him a D- because to your point, you said 2 Georgia running backs were highly sought after.
This is where...
Do you know who the other one was?
I just so happened to. He was drafted 2 picks later by Cleveland.
For those who don't know, Georgia did run 2 backs. Sony Michel was a good one. Personally, I do think the actual starter for Georgia was Nick Chubb. And instead of picking up Nick Chubb, they pick up Sony Michel. And this makes it, in my opinion, is almost down to just giving an F+ because
you pass on Nick Chubb.
Because it's not only you looked at you're looking for the position. It's not like you were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick this guy over this guy. You picked the same school. You look at both
out
of them
the same school. Yep.
Nah, but Nick Chubb's just not it. And maybe this is the reason he fell was because this was the year he got injured. I think.
Yeah.
But dude, talk about a really, really awkward situation now. You're like, yeah, I could have had Nick Chubb. I mean, we were looking at Georgia running backs and we just thought the other one was better. Slap you. Bill Belichick, what are you doing, man?
It is insane to see that he was not a first rounder, right? You look at the running backs in this first round and it's okay, there were 3 of them. Chubb? Saquon was first. Oh, no way. Was Nick Chubb second? No, it was Rashad Penny. Who's that? I don't really know. Yeah. But, Nick Chubb was the 3rd one. No, it's his running mate, Sony Michel. Wait, what? Yeah, no one remembers that.
Now, I will say, most people are probably like, oh, well, now it's dumb. But looking back on it, I even still think it's dumb there because I watched...
Yeah, I did too. I was a
Georgia fan up until...
I wasn't even a Georgia fan at that point, and I still knew enough about the draft
to... is crazy. And I don't know how he even fell out of the top 32. But yeah, D minus. That was buns. Okay.
Yeah, not a good pick. Shout out to him winning a Super Bowl and
Two
another
Super Bowls, yeah,
before
on
Nick
two
Chubb.
different teams before
On two different
poor
teams,
Nick
but
Chubb.
yeah, that's not as much a credit to
That's
him as it is to the
atrocious.
teams
That makes
themselves.
my blood boil.
Yeah. So the Patriots definitely did not crush it with that one.
And then-
But you know who did crush it? At number 32, ending the draft on a high note, the Baltimore Ravens take Lamar Jackson. 2-time MVP,
Not a running back.
not a running back, good at football. It's an A+.
I was gonna say anything other than an A+. Clearly, you're just dumb.
Yeah, that much is.
With that being said, B minus. No.
Yeah, that's about right.
The A+ is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I don't even know what else to say other than he has 2 MVPs. He's been consistently in the playoffs. Fun fact: I don't know if I've shared this on on the podcast, but I actually watched the first game he started against because his first game was against the Falcons.
Oh, his first start?
I believe so. Unless I'm just delusional.
I remember that year they still were insisting Flacco to come in, and they had Lamar come in on downs where it was a design run, and defenses were mind boggled by that. It's like, oh, Lamar's in the game. What the hell are they running? And it's like, okay.
Okay, that might have been a lie because I don't remember. Like when I'm looking it up, it's saying, oh wait, no, he did start 7 games. So I need to double check when that Falcons game was, but that was either like week 1 or week 2 of when he was actually playing. Because it was
probably
December.
his first full season as a starter.
It was the first week in December, so it very well could have been.
Oh, if it was in December, then maybe it was that first season.
I was
saying,
yeah. then maybe it was his first game. Because 7 weeks into the season, that'd probably push you at around. Yeah, that'd probably push you at around.
That sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah, and fun fact, he torched us. So
you get to see firsthand. Yeah.
From that moment, I'm like, dude. He's so good. Like we're cooked.
Yeah, the league is cooked, and the league was cooked. Yeah.
Yeah. So A+. Honestly, you could add another plus there too.
Yeah, that's true. At the end of the first round, you get arguably the best player in the round. So, shout outs to them. But that is the 2018 first round.
We're not doing all the rounds right now.
We can grade the next pick. It was Nick Chubb, but we already kind of did.
We did talk about Nick Chubb. A+.
Yeah.
Actually, it was 2 picks. Who the hell is Austin Colbert?
No way. He wasn't number 33?
No.
What?
He was 34.
I've been lied to. Who was number 33?
Austin Colbert. A guard.
Was he the Steeler? Did you go to the Steelers?
Wait, what? This is saying he got drafted by Cleveland. Hold on.
No
Cleveland
way.
I'm totally wrong. So Cleveland's second pick, they picked up him, and then the Giants went, and then they went back up and got Nick Chubb. So they had 2 picks within the first 3 picks of the second round. That's weird.
What? Okay, weird. Yeah, that is weird.
Sorry, that was
shout
a
out
random
them.
round, but shout
out them. Yeah.
Nick Chubb gets an A+.
Yeah. So there you have it. There's the 2018 first round revisited. A lot of mid, a couple slam dunks, and a couple whiffs, but hey, that's the draft. I think that's it. Hopefully something good next time.
I would say.
But
tune in next podcast where we're actually going over the 1972 draft pick.
Yeah, we will be. I thought it was 1927.
Oh, 20. Oh, we're going way back?
Yeah, 1927 draft class for like the Daytona Triangles or whatever.
That Bart Starr fella.
We'll grade Bart Starr next time. So get ready for that.
Podcast.
Yeah, get ready for it. Happy to be here. And what is it? Like, sub, share, whatever.
Do things. Hit buttons. just hit buttons. Who cares?
Yeah, that'll probably be helpful, hitting buttons, as long as it's not the first star on the 5. Some doofus gave us a 1-star review. I'll find whoever it was.
Someone gave us a 1 star?
Probably someone living in my house. So
I was going to say, probably someone we know, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely someone we know.
They just
we can't be the Talk to a podcast, but we can try. Okay. And on that note, this has been the Talk of Jack Sports Podcast. I have been Jack. You have been Ryan. At least I think so. And take care. Nice job. Way to go.
What a fun way to end.